The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
Fitch Ratings kept Georgia's sovereign rating unchanged at BB and reaffirmed a stable outlook. At the same time, the organization revised its 2026 economic growth forecast upward from 5.3 to 6.5%. In April 2026, the volume of remittances inflows into the country amounted to USD 318.1, which is 7.6% higher than the same indicator in April 2025. In April, Georgia exported goods worth $716 million, which is 99.4 million or 16% more than during the same period last year. At the same time, imports decreased by 3% or USD 44 million, totaling USD 1.48 billion last month. The National Bank of Georgia reduced minimum reserve requirements for commercial banks' foreign currency deposits by 5 percentage points. The corresponding order has been published in the Legislative Herald and will come into force on May 19th. As a result of this decision, banks will collectively be freed up approximately $250 million. Georgia Pension Fund has published its April's result, according to which the size of the fund exceeded 9 billion Georgian lari last month. More specifically, the fund currently exceeds 9.2 billion Georgian lari. The government met with representatives of construction companies and commercial banks. Under the changes, the limits for overhead and unfrozen expenses will increase. Prices for construction materials and machinery will be updated, and indexation mechanism will be introduced to partially adjust contracts. Values of prices change during project implementation. Meanwhile, the three tenders announced on April 28th for the rehabilitation of Rustaveli Avenue have failed for the third time. According to the website of state procurement agencies, the tenders failed because no company participated in the municipality procurement process. Honeywell Cement is launching a $70 million investment project in Kaspi. As a part of the project, daily clinker production capacity will increase by 1,200 tons, bringing total annual production to 2 million tons. Simultaneously, the company is building a new modern cement grinding line with a capacity of 70 tons per hour. Georgia's former Minister of Economy and former Deputy Prime Minister Levan Davitashvili has become the CEO of Italiana Petroli, one of Italy's largest oil companies. Italiana Petroli was acquired in May 2026 by Azerbaijan state oil company SOCAR for 2.9 billion euros. The government plans to increase fines for violations of licensing conditions in the gambling business sector. The concerns non-compliances with licensing requirements that prohibit gambling for individuals under 25 years old, public officials and people on restricted lists, as well as rules related to customer identification, record keeping and accounting. Ticket sales for Kanye West concert ended on May 11-12. According to the Ministry of Culture of Georgia, a total 70,000 tickets were sold for the June 12th concert. Ticket prices ranged from 470 to 1,300 Georgian lari. Considering the number of tickets sold and their prices, the concert revenues from ticket sales alone is expected to be substantial.
This is The Checkpoints. I'm Elena Kvantilashvili, author and the host of the show, and The Checkpoints team is ready to sum up business and economics week for you. The government plans to update its action plan for state-owned enterprises as part of an agreement with the International Monetary Fund. First Deputy Finance Minister Giorgi Gagauridzes told BMG. The reform will significantly expand financial supervision, increasing coverage from the current 7 enterprises to around 30 large state companies, including entities that are not yet corporatized but could be in the future. Gagauridzes said the goal is to improve oversight, ensure more accurate budgeting, and strengthen transparency in state enterprises' operations. A key part of the next phase of the reform will focus on identifying and gradually reducing so-called quasi-fiscal activities, non-commercial spending by state companies on social or political objectives that reduce profitability and distort financial performance. Where such activities remain necessary, they may be shifted to the state budget with clearer funding mechanisms. He added that the IMF no longer has objections regarding the ownership structure of state enterprises, emphasizing that financial supervision is seen as the main tool for managing fiscal risks. Final decisions on governance models will depend on which structure best serves both enterprise performance and state interests. Andrew Jewell, the permanent representative of the International Monetary Fund in Georgia, continues to consider the strengthening of ownership and corporate governance of state-owned enterprises as a priority issue for the country. Following comments by Finance Minister Giorgi Gagauridzes to BMG, where he stated that the fund had no remarks regarding the ownership part, the question of whether the IMF had compromised with the Georgian government and was posed to Andrew Jewell. Specifically, Analytica inquired if the fund had abandoned its long-standing emphasis on the main challenge of dual ownership, the conflict of interest. According to Giorgi Gagauridzes, the government held extensive discussions with the IMF mission and reached an agreement that financial oversight serves as the primary instrument for mitigating all fiscal risks. Consequently, the deputy minister noted that the specific ministry exercising the shareholder function is largely less important. Therefore, the current practice is being maintained for 3 specific enterprises, while for others, the existing 100% ownership model will remain. He added that the final model would be determined based on what is most beneficial for the enterprises and state interests. The 2025 Technical Assistance Report, titled State-Owned Enterprise Reform Progress Challenges and Next Steps, highlights specific recommendations for improving the ownership and corporate governance of SOEs. Legislative review the draft law on state-owned enterprises to strengthen ownership principles, clearly demarcate responsibilities among stakeholders, and define transparency rules and ownership functions. Strategy update. IMF urges the government to update the SOE strategy and its action plan to clearly formulate state ownership goals, institutional roles, and the sequence of reform priorities. Governance regulations. IMF urges the government to develop and implement regulations governing the selection, appointment, dismissal, remuneration, and performance management of SOE boards and executive management. Corporate governance code. IMF urges government to gradually apply the corporate governance code to the largest SOEs, utilizing the apply or explain principle between 2026 and 2029, with mandatory compliance required by 2030. Performance monitoring. IMF urges the government to conduct annual work on statements of corporate intent, to establish a limited number of targets for SOEs and their boards, implement annual performance evaluations, and regular monitoring of SOE boards. Portfolio analysis. IMF urges the government to perform a comprehensive analysis of large SOE portfolios to identify non-core activities for potential optimization, termination, or transfer to other agencies or companies. As Andrew Jewell exclusively explained to Analytica, the pilot project for dual ownership in 3 major state companies, Georgian Railway, Georgian Gas Transportation Company, and United Airports of Georgia, demonstrated tangible progress in management. Consequently, this model might be expanded to other enterprises. However, the IMF representative added that this is not the only path, as other alternatives exist. The IMF report report compares coordinated, dual and centralized models. It is noteworthy that the challenge of conflict of interest is explicitly emphasized only in the dual model. According to the IMF's logic, when a sectoral ministry acts simultaneously as a shareholder and a regulator, governance risks increase. This may deepen the practice of quasi-fiscal management, potentially making SOEs a burden on the economy rather than contributors to economic growth. In a brief interview with BMJ, Deputy Finance Minister Giorgi Gagauzidze explained that the establishment of management boards would be the final stage of the reform. He stated that the role of boards would increase once all enterprises are properly structured. Currently, board members are primarily drawn from ministries, a practice that will continue until the reform is completed. He noted that the final stage would involve mostly independent boards, though he emphasized that boards are rarely fully independent in any country. A state interest remains significant in SOEs. There is no formal agreement on state-owned enterprises reform. Instead, during the last Article 4 mission, the authorities noted that they agree with the IMF's recommendations and are accordingly updating the 2026-2027 action plan. This explanation was provided exclusively to the analytical platform Analytica by Andrew Jewell, the International Monetary Fund resident representative in Georgia. Analytica became interested in this topic after Deputy Finance Minister Giorgi Gagauzidze stated in response to a BMJ inquiry a few days prior an agreement had been reached between the government and the IMF regarding the SOE reform. According to the Deputy Finance Minister, the primary task will be to outline the 2026-2027 action plan. This is expected to be followed by the neutralization of the enterprise's quasi-fiscal risks, and only afterwards will the focus shift to changing the composition of the supervisory boards. Gagauzidze also noted that the issue of enterprise ownership is no longer on the agenda. As Andrew Jewell explained, the IMF's recommendations cover three main directions: expanding the Ministry of Finance's financial oversight and strengthening risk-based monitoring, identifying, managing and reporting quasi-fiscal activities, strengthening ownership and governance mechanisms. For years, one of the IMF's central recommendations to the Georgian authorities has been the clear separation of the state ownership function from the sectoral policy-making decision-making function. The IMF consistently urged the authorities to transition to a so-called centralized ownership model to reduce conflicts of interest and increase the operational efficiency of the enterprises. An example of this is the report published by the fund in October 2022, IMF Country Report number 22-313, Georgia Selected Issues, which contains the following clear statement. A key step in the reform is the establishment of a centralized ownership function to ensure a clear separation between the state's roles as owner and regulator. Currently, sectoral ministries exercise ownership rights over most SOEs, creating an inherent conflict of interest when the same ministry sets both the policy and the regulatory framework for a given sector. This recommendation was based on three main principles: direct control limitation. Sectoral agencies, for example, the Ministry of Economy, should not have direct control over enterprises as they are the policymakers for those sectors. Financial oversight. The Ministry of Finance should have the decisive word in financial oversight and risk management. Independent governance. In the process of corporatization, management should be transferred to independent supervisory boards staffed by professionals rather than public servants. These specific recommendations form the basis of the 2023-2026 strategy for the reform of state-owned enterprises, which the Georgian government later approved. The failure to fulfill these obligations ultimately became one of the reasons the IMF terminated its program with the Georgian government. The International Monetary Fund divides the fiscal risks stemming from SOEs into two major categories: exchange rate risks. The debt of the enterprises amounts to 9.5 billion lari, a large portion of which is in foreign currency, since their revenues are generated in lari, a 30% depreciation of the national currency could increase the debt-to-assets ratio by 15% in the very first year. Contingent liabilities, Georgian Railways $500 million euro bonds, which mature in 2028, require close monitoring. The situation is further complicated by the necessity to renew rolling stock, which creates a potential indirect implicit contingent liability. It was reported by the Ministry of Finance that work on the new 2026-2027 action plan has already begun. Giorgi Kakaoudze stated that the IMF no longer has any remarks regarding the ownership aspect of state-owned enterprises. However, a review of the 160-page technical report prepared by the IMF in 2025 reveals that ownership remains the most frequently used term in the document. The report summarizes the issue as follows. Regarding SOE ownership and corporate governance issues, this report emphasizes the importance of the state fulfilling the role of an effective and professional shareholder. Building on the reform successes achieved by the Ministry of Finance, the mission recommends addressing the identified shortcomings in the state's responsibilities as an owner. This includes clearly separating roles among all stakeholders and strengthening critical ownership functions such as the selection, appointment and dismissal of boards and executive management. Analysis of this paragraph alone indicates that the fund may not be fully prepared for compromise in this area. Professional shareholder role, the fund's reasoning clearly shows that while the state might accurately calculate losses, fiscal risks, it may still fail to manage the enterprise as a professional shareholder. Separation of roles. The IMF continues to demand a clear separation of roles. The underlying question remains unchanged. How can the state be a strong owner and an impartial regulator simultaneously? Sustainability threats. Despite acknowledging achievements, the report highlights that existing shortcomings in the ownership structure threaten the sustainability of the reform itself. The same report provides a comparative analysis of three ownership models: coordinated, dual and centralized. Notably, the fund mentions the necessity for strict separation of responsibilities only concerning centralized management, while it explicitly highlights the conflict of interest inherent in the dual model. Despite the relevance of the ownership issue, Analytica observes that the most critical recommendation revolves around the identification and management of quasi-fiscal activities. For the fund, this entails bringing the hidden costs of enterprises to light and separating them from the central budget. The 2025 report cites specific examples: Enver Hesi for electricity supply to the population of Abkhazia, Georgian Railway subsidized cost for passenger transportation, GeoGC the supply of social gas, water supply, providing water as tariffs below cost price. The document notes that the continued presence of activity is not defined by government legal acts such as funding non-core activities or maintaining inflating staffing. Approximately a year ago, steps taken under the reform proactively announced by Prime Minister Irakli Gobakidze focused precisely on these areas: saving funds, optimizing staff and restructuring. A presentation regarding planned changes within the railway sector was also held recently. According to the IMF's position, any non-commercial mandate should be clearly costed and funded from the central budget, which requires legislative amendments to ensure fiscal discipline and transparency. By requiring costs to be clearly outlined in the central budget, the fund aims to introduce greater transparency into SOE management. The IMF report clearly illustrates the intersection of quasi-fiscal activities and politics, particularly concerning non-commercial mandates. The fund highlights three primary problems: social policy at the expense of enterprises. Maintaining low tariffs is a political decision that is often misrepresented as a standard operational activity. Inflating staffing, utilizing enterprises to artificially maintain employment statistics or to secure political loyalty. Lack of legal basis. Enterprises should not execute activities that merely suit the government politically unless backed by formal legal acts. Since the IMF no longer operates a special program in Georgia and Article 4 consultations now solely encompass recommendations, the overarching question remains: what final shape will the state-owned enterprise reform take? Will the government achieve its goal, or limiting the action plan strictly to fiscal monitoring, thereby allowing it to retain long-term political control over enterprise management and personal policy? The upcoming 2026-2027 SOE action plan may prove to be a useful document that reveals these contours. The National Bank of Georgia has reduced minimum reserve requirements on foreign currency deposits by 5 percentage points, a change that will take effect from May 19. The decision is expected to release around $250 million in liquidity for commercial banks, which can be redirected into lending activity. According to Davitut Iashvili, head of the NBG Financial Stability Department, the move reverses a temporary tightening introduced at the end of 2024. At that time, the regulator raised reserve requirements to curb excess foreign currency liquidity and limit potential risks from rapid FX lending. The NBG now argues that those risks have eased, with market conditions stabilizing and excess liquidity no longer a concern. The central bank also noted that its ongoing FX interventions and existing lending limits, including the $1 million threshold on FX loans, help manage dollarization risks without stricter reserve rules. Following the change, the average reserve requirement will fall from 16.5% to 11.5%, based on deposit dollarization rate of about 53%. The NBG expects the adjustment to support credit growth, particularly for SMEs, by improving access to foreign currency financing. The Ministry of Finance has published updated statistics on Georgia's public debt as of April 2026, showing that the country's total government debt has reached $9.2 billion, an annual increase of more than $183 million. The rise in debt is largely due to new loan agreements signed over the past year to finance major infrastructure projects. One of the largest is a $360 million loan from the Asian Development Bank to support the construction of the Batumi-Sarpi Highway and Tunnel. Most of Georgia's external debt is owed to international financial institutions. The Asian Development Bank is the country's largest creditor, with $2.5 billion in outstanding loans. It is followed by the World Bank with $2.3 billion. Among individual countries, France's AFD is Georgia's largest bilateral lender, with Georgia owing $858 million to the French Development Agency. The National Statistics Office of Georgia published preliminary export figures for April 2026, according to which goods worth $716 million were exported from Georgia abroad in April, which is $99.4 million, or 16% more than in the same period last year. At the same time, imports decreased by 3%, or $44 million, and amounted to over $1 billion last month. In total, in the first 4 months of 2026, Georgia's exports amounted to $2.4 billion, which is an annual increase of 21%, while imports decreased by 5% to $5.7 billion. Geostat will publish detailed foreign trade data on May 19, which will reveal the goods exports increase last month and what is causing the decline in imports. More on this week's economic news and outlook in our short overview.
Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze has thanked large retail chains for taking steps aimed at reducing product prices, saying the government will continue working on price stabilization based on recommendations from a parliamentary commission. Speaking to journalists, Kobakhidze said that retail networks have already implemented certain measures to make essential goods more affordable. He added that in the medium term, structural problem identified by the Parliamentary Commission must be addressed, including insufficiencies in supply chains. According to the Prime Minister, improving these structural issues will shorten supply chains and ultimately contribute to lower consumer prices. He emphasizes that this is a medium-term process requiring continued coordinated work between the government and the private sector. Georgian Economy Minister Mariam Krivishvili participated in a major energy summit in Athens, which brought together over 270 participants from southeastern Europe and the Eastern Mediterranean, including heads of state, EU officials, and global energy and investment leaders. Speaking on the ministerial panel delivering 2030 leadership commitments for the energy transition, Krivishvili emphasized that Georgia's energy sector plays a key role not only in economic growth but also in strengthening energy security and independence. She said Georgia aims to increase its installed energy capacity to 500,000 megawatts over the next decade, positioning the country to become not only self-sufficient but also potential exporter of electricity. The minister also highlighted major regional infrastructure projects, including the Black Sea submarine cable, which has received EU project of mutual interest status, and Georgia's participation in Green Energy Corridor, reinforcing the company's ambitions to become a regional hub for energy transit and logistics. Tbilisi City Hall's Economic Development Service has opened applications for its micro and small business support program. Mayor Kakakaladze announced at the municipal government meeting. The scheme, first launched in 2025, has been significantly expanding this year. According to Kaladze, the maximum funding limit has increased from 20,000 lari to 50,000 lari alongside the broader budget. He said the program prioritizes projects focused on product processing, value creation, and quality improvement, aiming to strengthen local entrepreneurship. Eligible applicants include micro and small business registered in Tbilisi that have been operating for at least 2 years. Priority will be given to applicants with strong development-focused business plan, while funding is intended to support purchase of equipment, technology, and machinery. Co-financing rates varied depending on the size, ranging from 90% support for up to 500 lari to 70% support for amounts above 30,000 lari. Applications are open until June 1, and service providers and fast food businesses are excluded from the program. National Statistics Office of Georgia published preliminary export figures for April 2026, according to which goods worth $716 million we exported from Georgia abroad in April, which is $99.4 million or 16% more than in the same period last year. At the same time, imports decreased by 3% or $44 million and amounted to $1.48 billion last month. In total, in the first 4 months of 2026, Georgia's exports amounted to $2.4 billion, which is an annual increase of 21%, while imports decreased by 5% to $5.7 billion. Just as we published detailed foreign trade data on April 19, which will reveal the goods exports increase last month and what is causing the decline in imports. The third stage of registration for first-grade students in Georgia's general education institutions for 2026 and 2027 academic year begins on May 15 and will continue until May 25 at midnight. The phase is based on territorial allocation. The Ministry of Education, Science and Youth of Georgia said registration must be completed online through the Education Management Information System. Partners or legal representatives are responsible for registering children, and placement is determined based on official residential data from the State Service Department agencies of April 15. The territorial registration applies to 12 pilot cities including Tbilisi, Batumi, Kutaisi, Rustavi, Zugdidi and others. After online registrations, documents must be submitted to the schools between May 27 and June 12. Georgia's Ministry of Health, led by Mikhail Sarjoladze, held another meeting of the Commission working on reference pricing for medicines. The discussion focused on the current pricing environment in the pharmaceutical market and the effectiveness of the ongoing reform. The ministry recently announced that following recommendations from Parliamentary Price Review Commission, reference prices will be set for around 700 additional frequently used medicines. During the meeting, Commission members reviewed market conditions, existing medicine prices, and the functioning of the reference pricing system. They also emphasized the need to further develop the framework, strengthen monitoring mechanisms, and align further decisions with international best practices. Under Georgia's reference pricing reform, the state sets a maximum allowable price for medicines above which they can be sold. The system already covers more than 7,500 drugs, and accordingly, the ministry it has contributed to an average price reduction of about 40%.
Georgian chimney cake brand Lumiere's is planning further expansion in Dubai just 2 months after opening its first location in the UAE. The company invested around $175,000 in the initial outlet and is now working on adding 3 more branches in the city. Co-founder Emil Kurbanov said that the launch coincided with regional tensions, which briefly slowed operations for about 2 weeks. However, he noted that the market quickly recovered and activity resumed at a normal pace. He also said early results in Dubai have been positive, with strong brand recognition among customers familiar with Georgia. The Dubai concept differs from the Georgian model, offering both sweet and savory products, including sandwiches made with traditional Georgian cornbread. Unlike takeaway-only locations in Georgia, the Dubai branch includes a dine-in space with plated service, allowing a more diverse menu. Alongside UAE expansion, Lumiere's is also growing in Turkey, where it operates 2 branches in Istanbul and is preparing to open a 3rd. The company, founded in 2018 with just 300 lari in initial investment, continues its international expansion across multiple markets. More on business this week comes from Natia Taktakishvili. World-famous hospitality brand Planet Hollywood has officially entered the Georgian market through a strategic partnership with Central Park Towers in Tbilisi. As a cornerstone of this ambitious mixed-use development, the brand has launched the sale of hotel units, marking a significant milestone for the city's real estate sector. For investors, the project offers a good opportunity with a unique preliminary deal. The first 100 units are priced at $150,000, backed by a 40-year contract that guarantees a considerable annual return of $35,000. The building is designed as a premium project featuring 12 internationally acclaimed brands. Gastronomy takes center stage with elite names such as Beach Bar, Chotomate, and the legendary Parisian Café Angelina. In addition, the project will include Roberto's refined Italian cuisine and the vibrant Cuban atmosphere of Rumba. Beyond dining, the site will house Georgia's first luxury mall with over 200 brands, the city's largest spa complex, and a massive 4,000 capacity event hall. Construction is progressing rapidly, with the structural work on both towers already complete. By combining high-end global brands with guaranteed investor returns, Central Park Towers is set to redefine the capital's skyline and establish a new benchmark for luxury living and international commerce in Tbilisi. The U.S. visa landscape for Georgian citizens has shifted significantly following April 2 launch of the Visa Bond pilot program. According to Tinatin Gogwadze, founder of eCouncil, Georgian applicants are no longer receiving the traditional 10-year visas. Instead, under these new pilot rules, which Georgia shares with 49 other nations, tourist and business visas are currently being issued for a limited duration of only 3 months. A critical component of this new process is the mandatory financial guarantee, which ranges from $5,000 to $15,000. Gogwadze reports that over 90% of approved Georgian applicants have been required to pay a deposit of $10,000 regardless of their previous travel history or having held 10-year visas in the past. The logistical flow of approval has also been restructured. During the interviews, consular officers informed the applicant of their approval and the specific deposit amount required, but they no longer retain the passport immediately. Within roughly 7 days, the applicant receives electronic instructions to transfer the funds via the official pay.gov portal. This payment must be completed within a 30-day within the proceed with the application. Once the payment is confirmed by the U.S. government, the consulate establishes contract with the applicant to provide instructions for passport submissions for those not immediately assigned to a financial guarantee. Consul's data suggests their cases are typically moved into administrative review. This pilot program represents a significant departure from previous consular norms, prioritizing financial guarantees as a consideration for entry. Georgian furniture brand Comforter has reopened its showroom just this after a fire caused significant damage, unveiling a fully renewed space, updated collections and new partner brands. The company says the incident became both an emotional test and a catalyst for growth. To mark the reopening, Comforter is offering a 30% discount on all collections from May 11 to 18, alongside refreshed assortments and new European suppliers. CEO and co-founder Zurab Mosakhlishvili says the fire hit during the preparations for new projects, but the team's rapid response demonstrated the brand's resilience. Working around the clock, they rebuilt the showroom in just 8 days. We wanted customers to feel that Comforter does not give up. Today we are back and stronger, he noted. Co-founder Kuga Sokhadze adds that the reopening was an opportunity to rethink the entire concept. The company expanded product categories and added exclusive European partners to bring fresh options to the Georgian market. Customer support played a defining role, says Mariam Duvalishvili, highlighting that Comforter aims to deliver a more modern, customer-focused experience. Looking ahead, Comforter is exploring opportunities beyond Georgia. Co-founder Tato Norakidze says the company is already in talks with European investors, noting that the crisis proved strong brands can grow even under pressure, and the goal now is to take Comforter to international markets. Achara Textile expects its production and revenue to grow by around 10% this year, driven by increasing orders. Company director Gia Lominadze told BMDG to support rising demand. The company continues to expand its workforce after adding 900 employees in 2025 and is still hiring production staff as it works to enlarge its factories. Lominadze noted that Georgia's labor shortage remains a major challenge and has pushed wages higher. As a result, Achara Textile is shifting production toward more complex, higher-value garment models, while simpler items will be moved to the company's new factory in Egypt, set to begin operations in the coming months. Achara Textile manufactures apparel for major global brands, including Nike, Puma, Adidas, New Balance, and Under Armour. The company recorded revenue to $108 million in 2024, up from $247 million in 2023, and employs thousands across its facility in Rustavi, Poti, Batumi, and Kubilati. Confectionery company Sugar Free has recorded a 70% increase in sales in the first quarter of 2026, showing a strong start to the year. According to General Manager Tamas Eziashvili, the company is experiencing growing demand, particularly for high-protein dessert line, and its activity expanding its assortment with new products. Eziashvili noted that interest in rising not only among Georgia consumers but also from foreign customers, which she says provides an additional push for the business. Despite challenges posed by increasing raw material costs, Sugar Free has maintained stable pricing. We closely monitor market dynamics and aim to keep prices consistent so customers don't experience uncertainty. Our pricing policy has not changed despite the growth, she emphasized. The company is also focusing on product development, regularly updating its menu to match consumer tastes and trends. Looking ahead, Sugar Free plans to open a new branch in Tbilisi and is considering regional expansion toward the end of the year. Founded in 2022, Sugar Free currently operates 3 branches in the capital and continues to strengthen its position in Georgia's health-oriented confectionery market. Georgia's new state agro co-financing program is reshaping agriculture financing, leading many to believe the traditional preferential agro-credit program will no longer operate in its usual form. As Agrokiziri founder Beka Gonashvili explained on BMG TV, farmers will no longer apply to banks first. Project evaluation will now begin directly at the Ministry of Agriculture. The ministry told BMG that agro-credit is not being cancelled, but from July 1, all projects must be assessed by the Rural Development Agency before any loan is issued. This replaces banks' role with state bureaucracy, and interest subsidies will apply only after agency approves the business plan. Under the new model, farmers must complete their projects using personal or borrowed funds and then request reimbursement. The state will cover up to 50% of costs, kept at 2 million lari per project. Gonashvili warns that removing bank from early evaluation could overload the system and highlight the need for qualified decision-making. Filters should manage risk, not slow businesses, he said, adding that the program's success depends on efficient and competent project review. Lumier's Chimney Cake, a Georgian Tredelnik brand, says it has no plans to raise prices in 2026 despite regional instability and business pressure. Co-founder Emil Kurbanov told BMG that prices will remain stable as current conditions don't justify any increase. He noted that Lumier's products currently cost 10 lari or 16 lari, and the company believes price changes should only follow direct increase in production costs. If the cost price is not affected, business should not reasonably, Kurbanov said, adding that prices will remain unchanged through the year. The company employs around 30 staff in Georgia but does not plan to expand branches or launch major developments locally this year. Kurbanov said sales were initially affected by regional war, lower tourist flows and poor weather, which delayed the start of Lisi Lake season. Despite the early challenges, he says demand is now improving, especially for new products such as Biscoff cream chimney cakes, which have been strong customer interest. Lumier's Chimney Cake was founded in 2018 with an investment of just 300 lari. Georgia's pension fund has surpassed the 3 billion lari in assets as of April, reaching more than 9.2 billion, according to the latest data. The system currently covers over 1.5 million participants with an average individual savings balance of 5,912 lari. The fund's assets are distributed across 3 portfolios. The conservative portfolio dominates with 9.03 billion, which is around 99% of total assets, while the balanced and dynamic portfolios hold 52.4 million and 61 million lari, respectively. All participants are automatically enrolled in the conservative portfolio, while switching to other portfolios is available through a personal choice. In the conservative portfolio, assets are mainly invested in Georgian bank deposit certificates and treasury securities, with 19.5% allocated to foreign currency assets, primarily global stock indices. The balanced portfolio has a 62% share in lari-denominated assets, while the dynamic portfolio has a 44.6% share in lari assets and a higher exposure to foreign markets. Returns for January-April 2026 show the dynamic portfolio performing best with 6.35%, followed by the balanced portfolio at 5.35% and the conservative portfolio at 4.57%. Under the pension system, employees, employers and the state each contribute 2% of salary, totaling 6%, which is invested by the fund to generate additional returns for participants. And that's all for today. I will be leaving you off with the video prepared by the European Union in Georgia, and it is titled "With Love" from Team Europe. Have a nice day and the rest of the week. See you next Sunday.
I was given an opportunity to apply to become an EU ambassador in one of the EU delegations worldwide. The list consisted of nearly 40 posts. I have chosen only one, Sakartvelo.
Georgia has always been my focus, personal focus, and the focus of Lithuania. Lithuania is the only one country in the world that calls Georgia Sakartvelo.
When I have free time, so we are going with my wife outside of Tbilisi, so I admire beautiful nature. You know, this perfect combination of the mountains and sea, so it's something very, very special. And then, of course, a lot of fascinating historical monuments in the country. So
what I find special about Belgium is that it's a crossroad of cultures. It's kind of the crossroad between Germanic Europe, Latin Europe. And that's a little bit what I discovered about here, the region, and about Georgia in particular, is that it's a crossroad of cultures as well.
So I was really very honored to have prepared the first bilateral visits between Greek ministers and Georgian ministers.
Pour un ambassadeur, c'est une chance extraordinaire et même un honneur de servir dans un pays où se jouent tant de choses, où il y a à la fois un attachement farouche à l'identité et à la tradition et en même temps un élan extraordinaire vers la modernité et vers l'Europe.
I think we are very similar. We are emotional people. We are rather small countries, which also shapes our views on the world. We both produce wine. We have high mountains. So we have a lot of similarities. And I think there is a really friendship and certain affection between the two countries.
Քարտლის դեդիս քանդակება նამდვილად წარმოადგენს քարտվելի խალխის սուլს։ Ստումարտ մուղվարեա, მაგრამ ամավդրոულად თავის ქვეყանას და ეროვნულ იდენტობას თავგამოდებით იცავს, თავისუფლებისთვის იბრძვის.
European integration doesn't erase your national identity, it really empowers it. We became stronger and more Swedish. And I think this is also true for Georgia.
In addition to our love of sport in general and rugby, I think that we are both very committed to spending time with family and friends and enjoying ourselves and having that shared experience and supporting each other. And I think this is something that we seem to share as nations.
Estonians are emotional about Georgia. There are so many friendships being built throughout the years, so much love.
You know, as a diplomat, one of the wonderful things is that you go to different countries, you experience different cultures, different civilizations. You meet good people. That's what I enjoy, and many great, wonderful people in Georgia.
There are always ups and downs in international politics. So the Georgian people, Italian people, the connection, the people-to-people connections is extremely strong. I think with Italy and Georgia, we went beyond the breaking point. The bond between our two countries, it's unbreakable now.
Ultimately, it's up to the Georgians themselves to decide. If there is a sincere interest to move forward towards Europe, I can promise that Austria stands ready to assist.
2 years ago, our National Guards created this very meaningful motto, My Latvia, my responsibility. It's to remind us Latvians that we are responsible for our country. And the same goes also to Georgian people. Your Georgia, your responsibility.
We hope that the will of the Georgian people, who is overwhelmingly in favor of European integration, will be listened.
I have a particular bond with Georgia. I was baptized in Georgia. I have someone thinking and caring for me here forever.
This mural is a collaboration between the Danish Institute for Urban Art and the Georgian Street Art Association. It's bilateral relations. It's like a mosaic of small stories, and this is one of the stories that tell something about cooperation between Denmark and Georgia.
Some people say Georgia is a small country. I deeply disagree. If you look at polyphonic music, if you look at the history of winemaking, if you look at poetry, literature, sport, art, Georgia's contribution to Europe and to the world is really, really huge. I enjoy Georgia tremendously, and especially getting out there, going to the regions, meeting people, and especially meeting young people who are so talented, who are so European. I really see a bright future in front of Georgia.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.